Hello, basketball people, we have news. Let's go to more news about the Golden State Warriors. I ask you to give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, as I am a Warriors fan. The Warriors' lackluster offense would now benefit from having a dynamic point guard like Jordan Poole to provide a boost in scoring. The Golden State Warriors desperately need another one-on-one scoring threat outside of Stephen Curry. Jimmy Butler's ability to get to the free throw line has given the legendary guard a bit of help on that front, but the 11-12 Warriors could use more versatile offensive options. With many in the NBA sphere expecting Golden State to place their 23-year-old wing Jonathan Kuminga on the trade block in the near future, a perfectly timed update from Clutch Point's Brett Siegel may have given the team a chance to right a previous wrong and reunite with former fan favorite and current New Orleans Pelicans guard Jordan Poole. The emergence of Jeremiah Fears in his rookie season and DeJounte Murray targeting a return to the court in January has suddenly made Poole expendable to the New Orleans Pelicans, Siegel wrote Friday. Poole will make $31.8 million this season and $34 million next season before becoming an unrestricted free agent in 2027, which is why he could wind up having some suitors before February 5. After all, he is a former NBA champion with the Warriors and was a key scoring weapon for them off the bench. In a seemingly perfect turn of events, the ideal trade candidate for Golden State may have materialized. Though the 2022 NBA champion and electric shot-making guard has had a tough go of things with the Pelicans to begin the 2025-26 season, Golden State could view Poole as a desired target to remedy their lack of backcourt scoring behind Curry. The 26-year-old shoot-first guard has contributed 17.3 points and 3.4 assists on a rough 45.5% effective field percentage, as injury struggles have allowed him to make just 7 appearances for New Orleans. Poole's performance in the 2022 NBA Finals against the Boston Celtics showed that he can make real contributions to a title-winning team, and his familiarity with head coach Steve Kerr's system and the Warriors' offensive scheme would give him a fantastic head start if he were to return. Of course, resolving past differences with the Warriors' 2017 Defensive Player of the Year Draymond Green would be the biggest obstacle standing in the way of a joyous moment in franchise history. From an on-court perspective, though, Poole's hypothetical presence might mean everything and more to an aging roster aiming to notch yet another title in the Curry-Green era. One Golden State Warriors player told has been missing this season, he's been a big disappointment. The Golden State Warriors entered the season carrying the weight of massive expectations. Following a strong start, many believed they had finally re-emerged as legitimate contenders. However, a quarter of the season has now passed, and that optimism has evaporated. The Golden State Warriors find themselves stuck in mediocrity, holding an inconsistent 11-12 record and sitting in a play-in spot, far below the franchise's championship standard. The absence of Stephen Curry, who has missed recent games due to injury, has left the team looking disjointed. What moves do the Golden State Warriors need to make to win the NBA title? What would you do if you were in charge of the Golden State Warriors? Join the debate, share your insight. Use the comment button on the bottom left to have your say, comment, like, or comment. Young core has yet to take leap, while one new addition has been missing for Golden State Warriors. Aside from Stephen Curry and Jimmy Butler, the roster severely lacks reliable scoring punch, and the young core has yet to take the necessary leap. Jonathan Kuminga hasn't evolved into the star the Warriors hoped for, Brandon Podziemski has stagnated in his third year, and Moses Moody remains plagued by inconsistency. According to Warriors insider Anthony Slater, one specific offseason gamble has failed to pay off, the signing of Al Horford. They tried the stretch center thing this year and said, hey, they'll go away from the double big that has the loony, the bogut, kind of your bruiser inside, because they just feel modern-wise, they have to have a stretch center, Slater explained. Well, Al Horford has really been missing all season. He's had like 2 Al Horford-type games. So, that's another problem. In an upsizing NBA, it's a really tiny team. Al Horford still hasn't fulfilled huge expectations, struggling with the Warriors. Huge expectations followed Horford's arrival, with the belief that his veteran IQ and spacing would solve the team's spacing issues. Reality, however, has been harsh. Horford has struggled with availability, appearing in only 13 of the Warriors' 23 games so far. His production has been equally concerning. He is averaging just 5.6 points, 4.4 rebounds, and 2.0 assists per game while shooting a poor 29.8% from three-point range. Warriors' nightmare scenario heading into this season is finally coming true. This is the absolute last thing they wanted. Campo, Van, 8 foot. Coming into the season, the big question surrounding the Golden State Warriors was whether they could stay healthy. They were able to stay reasonably healthy early on, but now the injuries are starting to pile up, which is putting them in a nightmare scenario. Star player Stephen Curry has been out the last few games with a quad injury and will not be back until next week at the earliest. Jimmy Butler missed last game due to a knee injury and could miss the remainder of the road trip. Then, to make matters worse, Draymond Green injured his foot against the Philadelphia 76ers and may not be able to play over the next 2 games either. Warriors' injury woes create nightmare scenario going forward. That means there is a very real possibility that the Warriors will not have any of their 3 most important players over the next game or 2, which leaves them in a very uncomfortable spot. The good news is that none of these injuries seem to be long-term or season-ending, but the bad news is that with a team as old as the Warriors are, minor injury issues like this will most likely continue to pop up for the rest of the season. Head coach Steve Kerr knew he was going to have his work cut out for him entering this season in trying to manage the workload of various players and ensure the team was as fresh as possible going into the playoffs, yet he wouldn't have envisioned being without all 3 of his veteran stars at the exact same time. The hope was they could weather the storm if Curry missed a week here and Butler missed a game or 2 there, but it becomes really difficult to win games when your 2 key scorers on offense and best player on defense are not on the floor. The Warriors will have to turn to their younger talent to try to fill the void, but the problem is that young players like Brandon Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga have not been able to reliably step up with the veterans injured. Thankfully, players like Pat Spencer and DeAnthony Melton were able to step up on Thursday night in Philadelphia to at least make the game competitive, but it's a big ask for them to repeat that effort going forward. The Warriors will have a tough time getting through these next 2 games, but maybe once the road trip is over and they head back to San Francisco, the franchise will be able to get their key players back and move beyond this nightmare scenario. Jonathan Kuminga's return to Golden State hasn't gone the way he or the club had hoped this season. After a tense offseason that ended with Kuminga agreeing to a 2-year, $48.5 million contract extension, the former lottery pick has struggled to gain momentum. A spell on the sidelines with bilateral knee tendonitis halted his early progress, and his return has so far done little to clear the uncertainty around his role. Since coming back on November 29, Kuminga has scored 10 points, followed by outings of 8 points against the Thunder and 9 against the 76ers. Despite being healthy again, his involvement remains limited. Tim Bontemps questions Steve Kerr's usage of Jonathan Kuminga. Kuminga's minutes since returning from injury have been modest, logging 19, 16 and 20 minutes in his last 3 appearances. ESPN insider Tim Bontemps voiced his confusion over how sharply Steve Kerr's approach has changed compared to what was outlined during training camp. Kerr had previously spoken about relying on Kuminga as a primary offensive option on certain nights when veteran stars needed rest. Bontemps noted that 2 months later, there was no sign of that plan being activated. Instead of putting the ball in Kuminga's hands, the Warriors leaned on other options late in games, even as players like Brandon Podziemski struggled early. Lineups featuring Gue Santos and Pat Spencer closed games as Golden State attempted to claw back from deficits, a stark contrast to the expectations set in October. Jonathan Kuminga emerging as a looming trade candidate. Golden State's inability to find consistent form has only intensified the spotlight on Kuminga's future. The Warriors currently sit at 11-12 on the season and continue to search for reliable rotations. Kuminga is widely viewed as their most valuable trade asset, though he cannot be dealt until January 15. With his role still undefined, league insiders increasingly expect him to be included in a potential trade package. What Golden State could realistically receive in return remains uncertain, but the prevailing belief is that the franchise may attempt to flip Kuminga as part of a larger move to acquire another veteran star in an effort to stabilize their season. Warriors vindicated for dismissing underperforming guard struggling at new home. The Golden State Warriors haven't been shy in moving on from certain players over the last 12 months, including veteran guard Dennis Schroeder, whose brief time at the franchise came to an end in the blockbuster Jimmy Butler trade in February. While Schroeder did have some impact upon his arrival at the Detroit Pistons, and particularly during their first-round playoff series loss to the New York Knicks, the Warriors have been further vindicated in their move given the German's struggles to start his tenure with the Sacramento Kings. Dennis Schroeder has struggled since signing with the Kings. Sacramento's decision to sign Schroeder to a 3-year, $44.4 million contract did raise some eyebrows during the offseason, particularly when they followed that up by acquiring former MVP Russell Westbrook just before the season began. Schroeder started in his first 12 games with the Kings, including in a win over the short-handed Warriors where he went for 17 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists, albeit on only 6 of 17 shooting from the floor. Just as Golden State had seen enough prior to his departure in February, Sacramento too have already seen enough from Schroeder as a starter. They've swiftly moved him to the bench, preferring to favor Westbrook, who couldn't find a contract in the league at all until the very tail end of the offseason. Schroeder has since struggled with injury and missed the last 4 games as the Kings have fallen deeper into the mire. Sacramento are now 5-17 on the season and 14th in the Western Conference, with Schroeder averaging 12.4 points, 3.7 rebounds, and 6.0 assists on less than 40% shooting from the floor and 33.3% from three-point range. The 32-year-old could certainly have some impact on a playoff contending team in a backup role, but one has to question what exact use he has on this Kings roster. In fact, you could say that about a lot of their veteran players who are almost stuck there because they're on inflated contracts. Finding a suitor for Schroeder with 2 years and over $30 million on his contract could now be difficult for the Kings, not that he's necessarily their first priority when it comes to potential mid-season trades. Using Schroeder's contract less than 2 months after they acquired him, and before it expired during the offseason, continues to be a smart piece of business for the Warriors, who managed to rectify their decision to trade for him in the first place. Warriors need to make Pat Spencer a full-time player after his recent play. In a slightly controversial move, head coach Steve Kerr benched Spencer in favor of Brandon Podziemski in the closing minutes of the game against the Thunder as the Warriors got steamrolled down the stretch. On Thursday in Philadelphia, Kerr was faced with a similar choice and decided to leave Spencer in the game late as the Warriors tried to complete a comeback for the ages against the 76ers despite the absence of Stephen Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green. Kerr was rewarded for his decision as Spencer hit a clutch three-pointer in the final 90 seconds as part of a 16-point effort in 24 minutes played. The Warriors still lost, but the energy and solid play that Spencer provided gave the Warriors a winning hope. Now, the Warriors have to convert Spencer's contract from a two-way to a standard one like they did last season. Under his current two-way contract, Spencer is limited in the number of games he can play with Golden State. It may be a bit tricky with the way the roster is currently constructed, but they simply have to reward the way Spencer has been playing when given the opportunity. He's been too good to limit him right when he's getting hot. Spencer has a chance to make his case over the next 2 games as the Warriors are going to be without Curry for the final 2 games of their road trip. Kerr should absolutely start Spencer at point guard the next 2 games, giving him a chance to really prove that he can consistently produce when given the chance. Brandon Podziemski simply hasn't been consistent enough, meaning Spencer deserves this opportunity to build upon his 2 straight stellar performances and further push his case for a standard contract.